Welcome to Fulton's Cold Case. I'm Chris Foss, North Fulton Community Prosecutor. On today's program, we'll take a look at a 10-year-old homicide originating in a home that was set ablaze. We'll talk with Alpharetta Police about what they need to crack the case. And we'll profile a few other cases and ask for your help in solving these crimes. All of this when Fulton's Cold Case begins after the break. Welcome back to Fulton's Cold Case. I'm Chris Foss. The Fulton District Attorney's Office, along with a number of law enforcement agencies, partner to investigate and ultimately solve crimes in the community. And in almost every case, the cooperation of witnesses is what helps to seek justice. Fulton's Cold Case takes a look at some of the cases that have not been solved in our community, cases that have gone cold. Today's case comes to us from the Alpharetta Police Department. George Gordon is their Public Information Officer. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for inviting me.
This case dates back to 2005. George, can you set the scene for us and tell us what happened and where?
Well, what occurred in this particular case is we do have a homicide that remains unsolved. Back in January of 2005, we had Alpharetta firefighters respond to a house structure, a residence that was fully involved in fire. Upon putting out that fire, they discovered a body inside.
Well, since the firefighters were there on the scene, so how did the officers know that the body was in the house?
Well, the firefighters performed their duties. They quickly put the fire out, and then they began a sweep of the residence in order to determine if any hot spots remained, and that involved going from room to room. Based upon their work, upon entering a bedroom, they located a deceased male that was lying in bed. And at that point, they contacted Alpharetta Police detectives, which quickly arrived on scene.
So George, once the fire was put out, how long was it before the detectives could go inside the house and process the scene?
It was approximately about an hour and a half. The original fire occurred around 9:45 a.m. That morning in particular, and probably about 90 minutes later, detectives were able to enter to start their investigation.
Once the detectives got inside, what was it that stood out for them?
Well, they quickly determined with the initial fire taking place, obviously an arson investigator was on scene with the fire department, and they determined that the fire originated in a back bedroom of the residence. What was strange about this particular case is they located the deceased body in bed in a different part of the residence.
A different part from where the fire had started?
That's correct.
Okay. I also understand that there was a vehicle missing from the home. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the situation appeared to a homicide immediately to detectives. The male was actually curled up in his bed asleep, at which point he was shot numerous times with a small caliber firearm. An investigation of the evidence on scene, we identified that the victim owned a white Cadillac. That was his primary vehicle. That vehicle was not on scene, and in fact, we put a lookout on that particular vehicle, and it was located many hours later, parked in front of a Montessori school in the city.
Based on where it was parked, did that lead to any other clues?
That vehicle was processed. We knew that we had a homicide involving in this incident, so the vehicle was dusted for fingerprints, processed, it was impounded. We sent those fingerprints to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and it came back as partial prints only because evidently the killer, the suspect, had wiped down the vehicle.
So based on the house itself and the vehicle that was located, what information have detectives been able to learn about this case so far?
Well, this was a very intriguing case. The disturbing fact of this, we believe that this individual was shot numerous times while he was asleep. It was a 50-year-old white male. The crime scene itself, whoever killed him had covered his body with many materials from the house after they ransacked the house. We believe that we're looking for items from a cash box. The items were placed on top of the victim. We believe that the fire was started in a different bedroom, but because of the quick combustion of the fire, the killer had to make a quick exit before he or she could light the materials that were stacked on top of the victim's body.
George, what kind of information is the Alpharetta Police Department looking for in help in solving this crime?
Well, we understand this is a 10-year-old case. This occurred back in January 2005. We had one witness who stated that she saw the white Cadillac on Mayfield Road around 9:30 a.m. that morning, that January. Sadly, our witness is deceased, but we have no other tips. We're asking the public to come forward with any tips that can lead us to anybody that remembers a 1991 white Cadillac that was in the area of Mayfield Road on January of 2005. This was a full involved fire involving the residents, so we're sure that a number of people saw the fire, saw the smoke, but we need tips to come forward because at this point we don't have that critical piece of information that would direct us to a particular suspect.
Now, George, you mentioned that this is a 10-year-old crime and also that the witness who's deceased. Is there any additional concern that some of the information is going to be hard to obtain given the length of time that has passed?
That is a concern, but history has shown us that cold cases are often broken open when that one person comes up with something that they feel may be meaningless in nature, but they come forward and just give that one tidbit of information that starts that investigative link that can lead us to the killer. This crime occurred early in the morning. Numerous people were out and about in the community. It was a large structure fire. The white Cadillac stands out. It was left at this Montessori school for many hours. The vehicle was cold. The engine was cold when we located it, and somebody took the time to wipe it down from prints. So we're hoping that somebody can just remember some type of factoid that can help break this case.
Thank you, George. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience?
That's it. Just anybody with any information, regardless of how trivial you think it may be, we need whatever information you know. I invite you to contact the Alpharetta Department of Public Safety tip line. The number is 678-297-6307. And thank you.
Thank you, George. Officer George Gordon with the Alpharetta Police Department. We appreciate your time with us today. We'll be right back with 2 more cold cases. Stay with us. Today's cold case is the story of Melissa Wolfenberger. Melissa's body was found on April 29, 1999, near 858 Avon Avenue in southwest Atlanta. The 22-year-old's head was severed from her body and found by a passerby. The rest of her remains were found in a vacant lot near the original crime scene. 4 years later, Melissa was identified through dental records. She lived only a few blocks away with her husband, who had failed to report her missing. He told police Melissa had left the house in December of 1998 and never returned. The husband also never informed Melissa's parents of her disappearance. The husband and no one else has ever been charged with her homicide. The next case is a missing persons case. In 2003, the husband of Michelle Cullens reported her missing. The 32-year-old was last seen leaving her home at 1072 Victory Drive in southeast Atlanta. She was driving a red Jeep Cherokee, which was found several days later in an apartment complex directly across the street from the DeKalb County Jail. Michelle is the mother of 6 children and has not been heard from since her disappearance. We'll be right back. If you have any information on these cases, please let us know. You can call Crime Stoppers to leave your anonymous information, or you can contact the District Attorney's Office at atlantada.org. That wraps up this edition of Fulton's Cold Case. A special thanks to George Gordon from the Alpharetta Police Department, and a special thanks to you for watching. I'm Chris Foss. We'll see you next time.